Ishwaram, as resplendent sun. It's the start of a bright new day. Time to rise, time to shine, Lord divine. Time to lead us along life's way. Awake, Lord of Buddha party. Awake, O Lord, over all mankind. Awake, O Lord of compassion, that the world good fortune may find.
She is a longtime devotee of Swami's. She and her husband Ivan have come to us all the way from Grants Pass, Oregon, to be with us for our retreat. Wilma is both a nurse and a psychologist, and she has a 52-year span of working with people in need, particularly children who were abused, homeless, retarded, severely brain damaged. She has worked with over 260 children, and at times often taking into her home as many as 14 foster care children. She is now working with the elderly and cares again for in her home, some who require quite intense care, a few of whom are confined to wheelchairs. And in addition, she is the mother of 2 sons and the grandmother of 10 grandchildren. In addition, she also sits on the State Board of Oregon for the Foster Provider Home Association and is president of her local chapter on that group. She came to Swami in 1976, and they have had the Grants Pass Center for a long time. She is currently the president, and they hold retreats and do their devotional meetings on a regular basis. She has just returned from her 33rd trip to visit Swami, and I can't think of anyone more suitable and appropriate to speak to us about service than one who is the embodiment of service herself. So it is with great delight that I bring you Wilma.
Sairam and my pranams to Baba. I think this build-up is just a little bit much because I forget a lot of these things that I do, and she has to prompt me into saying, you know, what did you do? But so many of these things aren't exactly what I did. They're what Baba did and what Swami has done in my life. Before I was born, I chose a mother who was very service-oriented. And after birth, my father disappeared out of our lives, and at 6 months of age, we moved from Colorado to Washington, northern Washington. She met another man who became my stepfather, and the greatest man that I think I have ever known. He, too, was service-oriented. There was never a neighbor that needed anything that my dad didn't see to that they had it. My mother always saw to it that there was baked goods in a home whose maybe they were expecting a new baby or something, and she would see to it that they had bread and that they had cake and all the things that was needed. If there was a child in my class at school and there was a play and she didn't have money for costumes or the boy didn't, my mother made them all. And so I grew up in that type of an environment. And that's really all I've ever known, is that service is the key to happiness. There's no doubt about it. So talking about what is service and how do we do service, one has to become the person that is in need. You can't give service to anyone if you give it grudgingly, or if you don't understand what their need is, or if you overdo the service, then it's not a godly thing to do. But if you become that person and you find that within yourself you feel what their needs are, if they ache, you ache. If they hurt, you hurt. And if they have their hand out to you, you fill it. Then that is true service. But you don't go around hunting for things to do. You don't make lists of things that someone has told you, this service needs to be done, let's get on this one, and then nobody shows up to help you and you do it yourself. That's not service, because you haven't served anyone properly. And Baba has a way of putting in our hearts those that need service. He shows us this path to walk if we just listen. Listening isn't easy because we have a lot of people around us who tell us, well, you don't want to do that, or you shouldn't be doing that, or they have enough, they're just lazy, they're not working, they're not helping themselves. But when you dive down deep and you take a good look as to why do they need this or that, why are they in trouble, why are they not working, or why are they not doing these things, and then you begin to feel their need, and then you answer that call, that is true service. It's a deep service. For many years, with all of the children, I started taking children into my home at the age of 18 years of age. And I had a young son at that time. He was a baby. And we didn't have welfare at all. We had a committee of, I guess you would call them a type of social worker in Colville, Washington, small town. And when the children didn't show up for school that was on the registers, then this committee would go find out why. Well, they went to this home that was way up in the mountains, and the children were not in school, and they found this 18-year-old girl who had no clothing. She was wearing a gunny sack for a dress. She had no underclothes. There was no money. It was the feed sacks that they wore, but it was a gunny sack. It wasn't a cotton like some of the sacks are. And because I had finished my nurse's training at the time that I graduated from high school, it seems like I was always older than what I really was. Anyhow, they came to me and asked me if I would take this girl and see if I could help her. They thought that she was brilliant, that she had an opportunity to become something better than just a mountain girl if someone her age could work with her. So they brought her to me, and she was quite willing to help with my son Doug because she had all these brothers and sisters below her, and that's all she knew, was taking care of babies. Well, I took her shopping. We got her clothes. She had no idea how to wear them. She didn't know how to wear underpanties. She didn't know how to wear a brassiere. She had never had an underskirt. She had never had a nightgown. She had none of these things. And so the time came that she began to feel her worth. We cut her hair a little shorter than what it was, and it was naturally curly. It curled up, and we'd tell her how pretty she was. I started working with her on the alphabet, and she learned very rapidly. And as time went by, someone else in our community saw what was happening, and they wanted to know if I would take their oldest daughter and add her to the family. Then came Dorothy. And Dorothy was a pretty girl. She was in her early teens. And her family just couldn't support all of the children they had, and so now I had Dorothy, and I had Nina. Next, Dorothy's sister wanted to come and live with us, and so then I had 3, along with our son Doug. My husband worked for the railroad. He was what they called a Gandhi dancer. He helped set the ties on the railroad, and his wages was $3 a day. But somehow, from somewhere, there was always food, and there was always clothing, and there was all these things, and my mother added to that greatly. This was the beginning of my adult years in caring for other people and caring for children, doing what my mother did, sewing for them and so forth. And it didn't seem to me like it was anything special, because that was all I'd ever known and that's all I'd ever done. I was a nurse, and that's caring for people and giving service. However, when you get paid for the service you're doing, that is a job. To me, that is not service. You do service, but that's not the kind of service, when you're getting paid for what you're doing, that Bob is talking about, I'm sure, because I have talked to him about this. The service that he talks about is the things that you do after you've done your job, the things that you walk that extra mile, and the things that you do when spontaneously there's a happening and you get right in the middle of it without even thinking about it, and you feed and you clothe and you care for. To me, then that is service. So as time went by, this kind of service developed. There would be another child that needed a home, and deep in my heart, it was my child. And I would fight to take that child. And Ivan can tell you that many children came into our home because I would go down to the welfare or to the children's home and pick out which gave me a choice of children, and I would bring them home. So our household has always been full of children, and usually 12 to 14 at a time. And the fun thing was that when we did all of this, every time we had a very large house. In fact, we've always had big houses. Baba saw to that. And I would go upstairs and I would smell this wonderful sweet smell. And there was no perfume that I had ever smelled that smelled like this scent that we would always smell. If there was any problems with either a parent or someone that was trying to cause trouble with their child that we might have, and they would be coming to our home, before they would get there, this scent would just surround me, and I would smell this wonderful smell. And when I would smell it, I would think, everything's going to be all right. This must be my guardian angel, because always good comes when I have this scent in the house, and things would work out. And I have gone up the stairs to the upper floor when a man came to the house, tried to break in the door to get to one of the, well, she was a mentally ill lady that I had. And Ivan was downstairs, and as I went upstairs to tell her to close her door and stay in her room, I was met by the most intense block of this wonderful smell. It was like I walked into a wall of scented perfume. And I thought, this is going to be a terrific one, because it was so strong and so protective and so forth. In the meantime, Ivan had called the police, and they were coming. This fella tried to break in our big plate glass front door, and Ivan met him out on the porch and had to boost him off of the porch physically. He was very strong, he was very mental, and he was drunk. And Ivan got him down on the lower level, and the police came and took him. But the smell stayed there for the longest time. Then another happening, almost the same situation happened. And once again, the scent was so strong. It's stronger than when something was going on wrong with the kids at school or something, but it was just powerful. It's like I walked right up to a wall and couldn't go through it because it was so intense. When I went my first trip to India, and I walked into the temple, there was the smell. It wasn't from the Orient, it was from India. And it was always Baba that was there. I didn't know that that was Baba. I didn't know who Baba was as a name or just an energy field that took care of us, whatever we did. And that has stayed with me ever since. So the service that I feel deep in my heart that I need to do when the situation arises is Baba. He's there. He becomes my hands, he becomes my thoughts, he becomes my heart. And it's Baba who has been doing all these things all these years that I was taking credit for. So you see what the ego does to you. And when I found out that it was Baba, it knocked that ego down a long ways, because I knew that I was no longer the instigator nor the improviser of the things that was happening. He brought to us all of the children that we needed in order to benefit our lives. Whatever we offered them was nowhere near what they offered us. And our home was always wonderful, the children would behave so well when they were with us. We seldom ever had a problem with a child that could have been a very serious problem anywhere else, and were before we got them. Then we decided that we needed to have a nursing home because we needed to increase our income. And just nursing wasn't doing it, and taking care of the children and nursing and so forth wasn't enough. When I was nursing in the hospital, Dr. Smith was the first one. He had a lady who was comatose, and they couldn't get her awake. And he said, every time you come to nurse her, she does better. But when you go off shift and go home, we almost lose her. I want you to take her home, put her to bed, and see if you can wake her up. She was in her late 60s. And I said, oh, I don't think I can do that, because we have all these kids at home and we have other adults that live there. And he said, no, this is a doctor's order. I'm sending her home with you in an ambulance. So the next day, Ivan got a hospital bed, and we set it up, and they brought her to us, and we put her in a room by herself in order, and I must say, we had a big house, so this fits very well. We had 16 rooms, so we did have room for these people. Anyway, I worked with her, I don't know, I don't remember now. Maybe it was a month, maybe a little more than that. And bathed her and talked to her, told her how good she looked and how much better she was and how fine a person I was sure she was, and I'm sure you want to get up and walk, and so tomorrow you're going to get up, aren't you? And we're going to go for a walk, and all these little things I would tell her every day. I went up one morning to give her her breakfast, and she said, good morning. So we had her for quite a while, and then her family came and got her. She was awake, and she was doing things, and they came and took her home with them. It was the grandmother and the mother. Now, I didn't do that. The words that I told her came from Baba, there's no doubt about that. And the fact that the energy field that walked around with me was the energy that woke her up. In the hospital, when I was there, that's what happened. She would awaken, and when I was gone, it would drop away. So it was Baba's energy that I carried with me that brought her back to life. We had many, many instances like this, either with the children or with the patients that we had. But from that moment on, doctors began sending patients home with me. So we had 4 adults at home, and we had 14 children at home. And our children ranged in age from a newborn right up to 22 years of age. A girl who was retarded, another one who was brain damaged, one who had epileptic seizures. But they all could help when they were feeling better. So they would help with the ironing and help with the laundry, and one of the girls loved to cook, and as time went by, that group changed, and they grew out of the home, and another group came into the home. And the training was so easy to do because they all wanted to please, and they all felt at home in Baba's home. At that time, we didn't know who Baba was, but that was before I went to India during this time of all of the essence and so forth that I smelled. Baba lives in your heart all the time. You may not know he's there. I didn't know he was there. But he's always there, and if you just but listen, and if you just but feel, you'll know when he's with you. You'll always know that he's there, but you have to tap into the source. It's like knowing that there's a stream flowing by and you're blind, but if you never go out and find out what the sound is or put your fingers in the water, you don't know what it is. You don't recognize it. So you have to really open your heart and open your mind, open your ears and open your eyes, and you'll know when to do service and when not to, when it's appropriate and when it isn't appropriate. You'll understand that and feel that. Now, I've been asked to speak a little more to enhance what Dr. Harvey was talking about and Dr. Goldstein. They were talking about eating meat. And I have to add to their stories a little bit, or their lecture a little bit. I grew up on a farm, and my dad and the neighbors came and butchered. My dad wouldn't butcher, by the way, but the neighbors butchered for us, but my dad ate the meat. So he used to say, you know, it's one thing, if you're going to drink the broth of the devil, you might just as well eat the devil. So this was his saying. However, as time went by, I began to realize that I wasn't happy always going out there where they had butchered and seeing the head of the cow there or the baby calf there. And it began to bother me. And then as time went by and I got away from the farm, it didn't bother me so much to eat meat and to buy the meat because I saw it packaged in the store. And it was a way of getting protein and building my muscles, which I used constantly. And I felt that that was the only way that I could do that. But after going to Baba, and after hearing him lecture from time to time, the meat didn't taste so good anymore. And then we had neighbors, and when I was very young, we used to go deer hunting. My dad never did, but I went with my first husband and went deer hunting. And why did we go deer hunting? Well, at that time we went because we were very broke and we needed the meat. We fed a lot of people and we needed the meat. So that was one thing. But later on, the conversation went like this. Look at the big deer head I've just got. Look at that rack of horns. Isn't that a beauty? I did that. I shot that deer. I did that myself. So-and-so was with me hunting, and he run her out of the woods, or run him out of the woods, and I got a crack shot. And that bothered me very badly, because what had the deer done? In my mind and in my thinking, I began to think, the deer doesn't bother anyone. The deer doesn't take a bite out of me. If I'm in the woods alone, it'll run away. It doesn't eat another animal. It doesn't kill anything for its food. Why are we killing the deer? What are we doing that's wrong? And I couldn't eat venison anymore. I just could not. And I wasn't happy at seeing all of these nice trophies that they're hanging on the wall, either a bear or a deer or any of these things, because I began to realize we're not giving them a fair chance, and they're not doing anything to us at all. So then it came to me, it's the same with the beef. So if I can't eat venison, why am I eating beef? Cow hasn't done anything to me except give me milk. And it doesn't eat other animals. It doesn't tear anything up. It doesn't rip up flesh. It's a gentle, I've milked many cows, very gentle, very kind, very loving, very nuzzling when I'd go to feed them. And here I am eating their flesh. Why? I'm not going to do that anymore. So then after saying that, after a while, we had lots of people live with us that ate meat, and I prepared it for them because that's their lifestyle, and the state says when you take care of elderly, you don't take away their lifestyle. But whenever I would try to eat meat, even a hamburger, I would get such pains in my stomach that I couldn't stand it. Now, whether that came from my thinking because now I'm feeling guilty, or whether Baba was planting in my stomach a little bit of pain to tell me what that poor animal went through when it was butchered, which was probably what he was doing, I no longer can tolerate beef in any way. I didn't have to drop it just because I was told to. I dropped it because it no longer fit my lifestyle, nor did it fit my stomach. Then came turkey and chicken. All holidays, we had to have turkey, of course, you know, Thanksgiving and Christmas. We had to have turkey. That doesn't taste good anymore. And then the chicken began to go by the board. I would have the breasted chicken, which is supposed to be the healthiest and so forth, and I would peel off a couple little strips and chew on that, and I didn't want any more. So as time goes by, when you begin to realize what it is you're eating and what it is you're doing, that desire begins to fade away. Baba takes care of all of that. And so when I was hearing them speaking and I heard Dr. Goldstein say, you know, don't cut it off all at once. You don't have to. If you truly understand what Baba's saying and you truly understand yourself, it'll just fade away. And you'll be eating other things and you'll crave other things that will replenish the protein in your system. You don't have to worry about it. You'll just really say one morning, oh, I need to eat this or I need to eat that. I crave that. And that's what will happen. That's what you'll eat. So now that I've fulfilled that portion of my lecture, I'll go on with the other things that I wanted to talk about. Service is not always service to you or you or you. Service must also be to me, to the body that God gave me, the temple in which my soul dwells. And sometimes, even today, I forget that. And I don't always do service for myself. Consequently, when I don't, I end up in trouble, such as I ended up almost dying from having cholesterol in my heart to the point that only surgery protected me. But Baba was there. And it was interesting to note that during the time that I had the intense chest pain and was taken in for a heart attack, and they told me that this is what you have to have, and I said, no, nobody's going to split my chest open. Absolutely not. I've nursed too many years, I'm too smart, I'm not going to do that. So if this means that I'll have an attack to the end of my life, that's the way it has to be. I'm not going to do this. Well, Ivan talked to me, the doctors talked to me, and no, not going to do that. And I hadn't talked to Baba about it too much. I just told Baba, I'm not going to do this. That was simple. I made the statement, and I figured Baba would take care of me. However, there was something I had to learn. So I went over and I had the angiogram. And when they ran the wire up into the aorta, they couldn't get through the aorta. And the only space that was between the two little points of cholesterol, a white sewing thread, could barely pass through it, and that's all the blood I was getting into my brain, so forth. So they said, what's going to happen to you is you're either going to have a massive heart attack or you're going to have a stroke. Now, if we do the angioplasty, where we will run the little drill up and we break that all loose, it's liable to float and go up into your brain. We don't want to do that, but you have that choice, surgery or angioplasty. Which do you want? Well, I had already said no surgery, so I guess it's going to be angioplasty. So we made the appointment for the angioplasty over in Medford, and I was to go in, I think it was on was it Thursday morning? So we go over for the appointment. Everything had been set up. When I got there, they prepped me. I had my room and everything, but guess what? There were no doctors. The doctors were all gone. So I thought, see, I'm not supposed to do this either. This is not for me. So they said, I'm sorry, you'll have to go home. and we'll make another appointment for you. So now I'm beginning to talk to Baba. I'm saying, you know, if I'm supposed to live through this and all of this, Baba, now I want your healing and I want it now. So I went home. Now, when we got home, we had all of the group of bhajan singers that you could imagine in our home. And they were there to sing bhajans and healing prayers for me to have the angioplasty. They were very surprised when I walked in, thinking that my stubbornness, I guess, was paying off. Christiana from Germany, who has been with Baba, and Baba gave her her singing voice and told her that he did, was there. We had people from all over, and they were singing all the healing bhajans. It was wonderful. But it was the most breathtaking, the most intense situation that I have ever been in at any time, no matter what's happened in my life. The songs that they sang, the energy that was in our puja room or our living room, Baba's room, was unbelievable, totally unbelievable. It was like the room was going to explode, totally blow up at the seams, and I expected to see the French windows shatter. The emotion in the room with everyone that was there changed the lives of everyone that was in that room that night. They've all told me that. Their lives have completely changed. And it definitely changed Wilma's life. Because sitting there, hearing that, I knew it was Baba, and I said, I'm going to have the surgery. I'm going to do it. So we made a new appointment. I called the doctor, and he said, wonderful, the specialist that was going to do it is now back from where he was doing his emergency. And he said, this is great. And so I went over for the surgery. Before the surgery, they show you this wonderful film that's going to happen to you. And it's going to happen to me. And my husband and my daughter-in-law were there, and they could hardly look at this film because here's this big saw cutting right through the chest and all of these horrible things. And even a nurse, I've been in surgery, I know what surgery is. But when you think of them cutting that bone right down through the middle, it's not like being in surgery. It's a little different story. But it did not bother me. Not one bit. It didn't bother me. I had no fear. It was gone. Baba had wiped it all away. And went into the surgery. It was a 5.5-hour surgery. Came out of the surgery into intensive care. They hooked up morphine drip and said, any time that you get the slightest pain, press this button. I never had to press the button. I didn't have any pain. Everything was normal. I wouldn't have known my leg. They said that where we took the vein out of your leg to replace the artery, you're going to have a lot of pain in your leg. Everybody does. So we want to tell you that that's quite a possibility. My leg has never hurt. 5 days later, I was sent home from a major surgery. That was the first part of November. January the 2nd, I took the tour to India. In July, I took the second tour to India. And when I was there, there's some people here that remembers this situation. I said, thank you, Baba, for saving my life. He said that was my duty. So I am still taking the tours to India. I get a little short of breath once in a while. My ankles hurt a little bit, but then I've just turned 76 years old, so I expect them to do a little something that's different than I was doing 10 years ago. But Baba is always there. If you know that he's there, if you're aware of his oneness with you. I was aware of his oneness with me. I never thought a second time after those songs were sung and I realized, hey, you're not talking to Baba at all. You're not even asking him to stop any of this. You're just asking him to heal that heart. You're not asking him for anything else. But he felt that I needed to go through this. I needed to show a lot of people what he could do. And he did. And I did. And so it was an experience that's been just wonderful. And that's been 2 years ago now. And hopefully, I won't have to show anybody else what's going to happen again. I think I'm through with that one. We'll see what the next chapter is. Anyway, we still continue to do the service because he didn't take me. He left me here to continue the work that I was doing, continue the teaching that I was doing. One of the things that we have found as a group, and whether we'll do it again this year or not, we're not certain, is that we collect clothing from all of the people that want to bring them. People have always brought us clothing because of having children that had no income. And this has continued, and in order to utilize the clothing that we were getting, we took tours to Mexico, to a village outside of Tijuana, and gave the clothes to these people who were so desperately needy. Now, some of the clothing that we got was not quite the style that our young people are wearing today. It wasn't hep, as they called it. So the people in Mexico are not quite so judgmental. They will wear clothes that fit them nicely. They don't look badly, but they wear a different style of clothing, and they're just thrilled to death to get the clothes that we take to them. Sometimes I wonder, is this for my benefit because I like to see these people happy? Is it Baba's benefit because he knows that they're in need and he knows that we're the channel? Why do we take these clothes? So I really, talking to some other people that asked me the question, I had to delve down and think about this. No, it's not because of aggrandizement or egotism. It's because I felt the need of these people so greatly. When we took this last batch of clothing down, another devotee and his wife, he took his big pickup and we took our van and we loaded them totally full. We had almost 2 tons of clothing. And when we got down there, the president of the Sai Center in Tijuana, and there are 2, by the way, but the one Sai Center in Tijuana, said there are 200 people signed up to get the clothing that you have bought. 200 people desperately in need of clothing that we were able to transport down there. So I felt like Baba's calling was, there is a need and you are the answer. And whether we'll do it again this year, we've done it for, I think, 4 years, is it now, that we've made 4 major trips to Mexico. I don't know what's going to happen this year or how we're going to do it, but if it's Baba's will, we turn it all over to him, and these are your clothes, Swami, and what are you going to do with them? Now, when we got this load of clothing, they all came in on our front deck, and we sorted and we took care of the sizes and the children's, the girls and the boys and all of these things. And when we did all of that, the fire marshal came up and he said, you can't have these things on your front deck. This is a fire hazard. So I'm giving you, how many days did he give us to remove those off the patio? 5 days or 6 days to get them off of there. What are we going to do with these? They're headed for Mexico. We're not going to give them to somebody here. So now what is our service project? Is Baba telling us that you're not to do this? No. Well, is he going to cancel our insurance? Well, yes, he's going to cancel our insurance. If we don't have insurance, then we can't have a foster home for elderlies. That's the state law. So now this little play that we're going through became very, very apparent. We have to do something. But we didn't have the money to take these to Mexico. It's very costly to do that because you have to stay in motels on this side of the border. And not only do we have to stay in the motels, we have to eat. And the food in California is more expensive than what the food is here or in our home. So how are we going to do this? One of our devotees said, I want to go, and since I'm going to be the service coordinator this year, we'll take our pickup and we'll go. We still didn't have the money, so we told our side group, we don't have the money to take these, and we don't know where we're going to store them, what we're going to do with them. The next day I had a telephone call from an anonymous donator, and he said, we can't go to Mexico, and because of my work, we can't do the service in our center that we'd like to do. We understand that you're going down with a load of clothes, and we want to pay for the trip. And so $800 was donated to take the clothes. It cost us $820. They were that close. We were able to stay at their home and visit with them and visit the Sai people that was there, sing bhajans with them going both directions. And Baba furnished the money. Now, no one knew of the name of the people because they sent a cashier's check. That's it. How does one know when Baba is so involved and you're doing something that you feel is right, and yet everything stops you until the last minute? Well, we didn't stop. Even because of the fire marshal, we didn't stop. And so this time we won the game. It was wonderful. The people were so happy and everything went smooth, and we do have our insurance with a warning, don't put these on your deck again. Well, what do we do with clothing? Clothing's not a fire hazard. Every department store in town has clothing all through the store. But he said not in a foster home. So there is a lesson there someplace, but I'm not sure what it is. So that was another thing I wanted to tell you, that with Baba at the helm, we can't go wrong. When he gives us the ideas of the things we're to do, and we follow it through without our own ego, then it's right. It's the service that you should do. It's the service that should be done. And there's a jillion things out there that can be done that's service-oriented. There's so many, many things to do, whether it's feeding the elderly, and that's a great one because there are so many elderly in nursing homes that don't feed themselves. And because of that, they usually go hungry and they lose weight, and after a while they pass away because nurses don't have time to spoon feed them. And sometimes they can't swallow. We have one who's just had a stroke and she can't swallow. And so we have to sit there and tell her swallow, swallow. Put a finger on her throat and tell her to swallow. After a while, she'll be swallowing again. She's swallowing a little better. I called home today and they said, yes, she was swallowing. All these little things that can be done for somebody somewhere. You just need to take a look around and you can find so many things to do without pre-planning it. You don't have to pre-plan it. You can just walk in and say, I'm here and can I help? Can I feed? Can I write a letter? Can I do this or that? And then forget about it. There's so many things that we have done through our lives that I couldn't begin to name them because I have forgotten what they are. And somebody will come along and tell me, you remember when you did this or that? No, I don't remember anymore. Because it isn't important that I remember. It's just that I have done it, it's over with, and it's done. And it's a service to anyone, anywhere, anytime that you can do. So basically, on service, that's the only thing that I want to talk about. Now, if there's anything, different ones have asked me to tell some stories, and I have a half an hour here to go. And for the life of me, I don't remember what stories I've told and what stories I haven't. So if anyone here has heard of something that you'd like to hear about, excepting the ones that's on Jim's tape, or James' tape, I'd be glad to give you a couple of small stories while I'm still up here. You two missed it when I talked about you. Oh, there was one, yes.
I had a story I thought you might tell. If you're opening up for questions. Well, when I was living in Eugene, I heard about you, and I was directed to see you, and I regret that I think I even wrote you a letter, and so I just come to Swami at the time. And I'd been told by Norman Haskell down in the book center in Tustin that you had some vibhuti appear on your pictures, and I was wondering what that was about. Some phenomenon.
Vibhuti appears not only on our pictures, but on Baba's robes, on the pictures, and on odd and sundry places in the house. It has appeared in such strange places that it's unbelievable. When I first went to Swami, after I was there, the second year that I came back, and I brought back, in those days, the pictures were kind of like paper. I don't know what, it was like, their paper's not like ours, and they weren't all of this nice shiny film that we're getting now, but they were more like magazine paper. And I brought those back with me, and they were the first ones to have vibhuti. They were sprinkling over them, and I thought they were dusty because they looked dusty. And so I dusted them. And the next day, the dust was back. But it was bigger, in bigger spots, and so forth. And then following that, we had a little Mongoloid girl that lived with us, or she was a lady, she was 33, I think. And when we would have bhajans, she would be sitting up front by me because she liked to be up there where Baba was. And after Baba, or after bhajans, and we were singing the arati, she says to me, "Mama, Baba's sitting on the chair. Look, he's sitting on the chair." And in the middle of arati, I said, "Shh, Nancy, Baba's sitting in the chair." And I looked, and the chair was dipped in the middle, which it had not been. It's an overstuffed chair, and it was nicely rounded, but it had a nice dip in it where Baba was sitting. And the vibhuti began to pour over her arm, and she held her arm out, and she says, "Look." She had vibhuti. She recognized that Baba was there. Then the vibhuti began to appear more regularly on the pictures, and we added pictures. The wall then became just like a kind of a collage of Baba's pictures. Everybody brought a picture to have vibhuti on it, which happens. Well, some of them did, and some of them didn't. And then we had a retreat, and a man came to the retreat that was dressed all in black, and he wore a big chain on his belt, and he was very dark. His aura was extremely dark. And I thought, who is this? You know, he's not invited. What is he doing here? And I asked him where he was from, and he was from Cave Junction. And I said, "Are you a Baba devotee, or do you know about Baba?" And he just said, "I want to work in the kitchen." And I said, "No, we have kitchen help. Sorry." And he went back in the living room. Well, Bhante, who was a Buddhist monk and who came and lived with us every summer and was training me in all kinds of herbs and color healing and using color in the house to benefit the clients and so forth, he said, "Don't worry about him." He said, "I'll give a class this afternoon," and he said, "Let him come. Just don't worry about him, but he will go away." Well, at that time, my mind wasn't quite as strong as it is now, and I said, "Okay." So the man came in, but he sat there, and he said, "I'll give the class in just a moment." And he sat there, and he sat there, and he sat there. 2 hours went by, 3 hours went by, and Bunty was apparently sleeping. We're all sitting very quiet, waiting to see how he's going to send this man away. Suddenly, the man got up, walked out, and walked down the hill. We never saw him again. What did happen, there was no vibhuti on any picture. They were as clean as if I had taken all of the borders off of them. There was no vibhuti behind them. Under the frames, there was no vibhuti. There was no vibhuti, and I was horrified. I thought, what did we do? How did this come about? Did he do this? Did Baba do this because he was unhappy because of this evil that walked into our nice home and so forth? And then 2 days later, I walked into the living room and it felt so different, and all the vibhuti was back on the pictures. And as we remembered it, basically in all the same places, but of course you don't look at a picture and measure where the vibhuti piles were, you know, and so I'm not sure that they were identical, but apparently they were, and the vibhuti is still there and still falls off of them. The vibhuti comes on Swami's robes. He gave me 2 of them. The light-colored one, he said, you will put this at the dining room table when you have your potlucks. Now, potluck is not an Indian word, I'm sure. I don't think so. Anyway, that's what he said. When you have your potlucks, put it on my chair. And my chair must be for a panoramic view. In our dining room, you can see, if you sit on the east side of the table, and it's a very long table, it seats 21 people, you can see to the south, to the west, to the north, and by turning the head a little bit, you can see the mountain on the east. So that's where Baba's chair is. He now has a panoramic view. The other robe, he said, put it on my chair in your living room. That is my home, with the red carpets, the red draperies, where your husband Ivan is sitting watching television, and you're sitting in your blue chair sewing. So Baba had his chair in the living room, and it's still there. The vibhuti still appears on the robes, and sometimes it piles up high, and then people, you know, they have to test it to see what it is. But we have a vibhuti come, we have little angel heads up over our dining room on the wall, way up high, these little guardian angels. And when they took them down to clean them, they were covered with vibhuti up on the top of their heads and up on their wings, and they're up, well, higher than that exit sign is there. We were having a retreat, and my feet were so tired and they ached. I had little trouble with my arches and things. I never get shoes that can fit me, so my feet were hurting. And I took my shoes off, and I set them in the dining room. I set my purse down by them, and somebody said, Wilma, come and take a look at your shoes. They were full of vibhuti. My purse was full of vibhuti in the inside pockets of my handbag that I was carrying, and my shoes were full of vibhuti. So I put them on, and my feet felt so much better. So there again, Baba just comes to the fore. And that brings on another story. I had a lady who just was really acting out. She was mental. And nothing that we did helped her. No medication that we could give her was doing any good at all. And she was really getting raunchy, and she was upsetting the whole household. And she went storming off upstairs. She sat down on the bed to think about it. I said, you go up and you think about this. When she came down, she had on black slacks, and all across the seat of the slacks was gray. And I said, what did you sit down in? She said, nothing. I sat down on my bed. And I said, well, what's all over your slacks? She says, I don't know. Vibhuti? So she goes running upstairs, and all over her bed was vibhuti. Under her pillow was vibhuti. And between her sheets was vibhuti. So I said, let's take a look at the other beds. Maybe Baba's purifying the house, because she went through it, you know, just in a storm. She was really upset. We went into Rosie's room, Lois was in that room, I'm sorry, but Rosie has it now. On her pillow was written love in vibhuti. Under her pillow was love. In her sheets was vibhuti. Downstairs, in all of the patients' rooms, everyone had vibhuti between their sheets. He had cleansed the house completely. And when Ivan went to bed that night and he turned back the sheets, there was the vibhuti and vibhuti under his pillow and over his pillow. So Baba came very protective, and the girl didn't act out anymore. That was gone. Her behavior changed completely. The shock of the vibhuti or Baba's grace or whatever it was just changed the whole household. So once again, that's some of the stories about the vibhuti that comes.
How did you become a Baba devotee?
Oh my. That was because Baba called me to be his devotee. I guess I was always one, but like I told you first, I didn't know it. I didn't know who he was. But he got in touch with Indra Devi, who I did not know. I'm not a yoga person. I've never done yoga, never was interested. She called me on the telephone, and she said, Dr. Bronkey, yes. She said, will you please send your $200 as a down payment on your ticket to India? And I thought, what in the world is she talking about? I'm not going to India. You've got the wrong person. You are Dr. Bronkey? Yes, I am. Well, I need the $200 because they won't hold the tickets unless you pay your $200. I said, I'm sorry, I'm not going to India. And I hung up, and I thought, what is the matter with this woman? She must be out of her mind. I didn't even ever think about going to India, let alone going there. A few days later, she called again, and she said, this is Mataji. I said, who is Mataji? And she has the sweetest little foreign voice, and she said, I'm calling because I need to have your $200 to hold your ticket for your trip to India with me. And I said, I am not going to India. I'm sorry, but I haven't lost anything in India. I often think about that. I wonder if Baba's ever going to say, have you lost anything over here? Anyway. So this went on for a long time. And finally, I began to think, maybe I am going to India. No, I'm not. No, that's not for me. But I found myself saying to Ivan, Ivan, what if I was to go with this woman to India? What would you do? He said, well, whatever turns you on. If you've got the money, you can go. So now you see what happens is I've got this house full of handicapped children. So I thought, there's no way that I can go and leave these kids with anybody. But I'll put an ad in the paper, and if I get an answer to it, then I'm supposed to go. But if I don't, I'm not. So I run an ad in the paper. I didn't get one answer. Nobody wanted to take care of 5 handicapped kids. So then the next thing was, I thought, well, I'll advertise in the Nickel magazine. Didn't get any answers. Then it got stronger that, you know, I'd better start working on going to India because apparently I'm supposed to go. But nothing was working out. And I didn't have the money. There was no money to go to India. And at that time, the price of the ticket was $900 for the plane fare plus. So I had one client who, she was a paraplegic, and she was welfare, and they hadn't sent her money for almost the year that we had her, and she was also Social Security, and that was being switched over from her father's Social Security to her mother's because his had run out, and I hadn't had any money for her. And all of a sudden, one afternoon, I thought, I have to go back over to Medford and try one more time to get that girl's money. So I went dashing over to Medford. I took the papers to the state office, and it was almost closing time. And they said to me, we'll stamp these, and you take them over to Social Security, but I don't know if you're going to get in time. So this room is space about like this, and there was no entrance in behind the counter. You had to go into the main building and come back around to get in. And it was closing time. There was no one there but me. And I'm standing there drumming on the counter thinking I have to get over there to Social Security. And I thought, where am I going to do with those kids? How am I going to do this? If I get this money, how can I go? I don't have anybody. And somebody tapped me on the shoulder 3 times. You will take them to your daughter in Portland, the sweetest voice said to me. And I thought, oh my goodness, there's nobody in here. Then I said to myself, this is getting to you, Wilma. You've got to put a stop to this. So just forget this. When you start hearing sounds and hearing voices, you've had it. So that's enough. So I got the papers and I dashed over to Social Security, and I was the last one in. He was locking the door, so he locked it behind me. He said, there's one worker, one lady still here. So I went over and she said, come over and sit down. She said, you've come so many times for this money. I'm going to telex to Seattle and find out why it is that you're not getting any money for this lady. You can't afford to keep her all this time because it was very expensive to keep her. She had a lot of special equipment, braces on her legs, all kinds of things. Oh, anyway, so I'm sitting there. There was a man in a glass office over on this corner. This is all windows. The man that locked the door had locked us in, and he had gone on his way. The lady took the papers and went into the back to the telex. And I'm thinking, just how am I going to do this? I was going to forget about it, wasn't I? But no, I'm still thinking about it. How am I going to get care for these people? I feel like I'm supposed to go to India, but I don't know why, and I don't know what this is all about. Tap, 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 real hard on my shoulder. And this sweet voice again, I told you, you're going to take them to your daughter in Portland. And all of a sudden I thought, I am. That's what I'm going to do. Now they live, my son and his wife and their 2 babies live in a 2-room apartment. I have 2 wheelchairs, a boy with an accordion. If he didn't have that with him, he just couldn't function. A woman who had epileptic seizures. The one girl was in braces, and one fairly normal girl. But I'm going to take them. She came out and she gave me a check for $1,000. And she said, if they should send you another check, she said, just return that. Write on it that you have already received a check, right across the face of it. And she said, then the balance of your money will get to you, but at least you can have this to meet some of your expenses that haven't been met up to this time. So I go home singing all the way home down the freeway. Now I know I've got $1,000, and now I know that I can take them to my daughter, but she doesn't know it. My son doesn't know it, and where are they going to put them? I don't know, but that's what the voice told me. So I go home, and it was time for my son to come home from work up in Portland, and Ivan came home, and I said, Ivan, I'm going to take the kids up to Helen and Russell. And his response was, Jesus Christ, what are they going to do with them? And I thought, well, they probably need his help because this is what I was told I was to do with them. So I called Helen on the phone and I said, honey, I got a favor to ask of you. She said, yes, I know. You want to bring the kids up so you can go to India. And I said, who told you that? And she said, I've known it since morning. We've already put in bunk beds in Ivy's room. We've already figured out what we're going to do in the daytime. We're going to put a commode on the back porch because we can't get the wheelchairs in the bathroom. My sister's going to come over and help, and we're going to take them on picnics and that sort of thing. And so if you bring them up, we'll take care of them. So now I have care, and I have $1,000. I don't know. To this day, I don't know. She just sensed it. I psychically sensed it. I don't know what else to say, because she's never admitted to having anyone talk to her, or Baba talk to her or anything. Or if she did, she wouldn't admit it, I'm sure. So now I'm right down to the wire. It's time for the money. I had sent, by the way, I sent the $200 by check to Mataji. And I thought, I'll never see this again. Well, I did never see that again, that's true. But anyway, so I was giving classes on spiritual teaching and so forth. And among them, I had a doctor and his wife that came up from Crescent City every week to the classes. And they'd heard me go through all of this rigmarole about going to India, you know, and saying how crazy it was and so forth. So they came up, and Doc says to me, Wilma, would you come over here? I want to talk to you. Gets me over in the corner of the dining room, and he says, I'm going to give you a check for $1,000. And we can't go to India. We'd love to go and pay your way, but we can't do that. Now, I'm going to give you this check, and you can pay it back without interest anytime you want, no matter how long it takes, because we want to see you go on this trip. If you come down next weekend, because now I only have a week left, if you come down next weekend, next Friday, we're going to give you another check for $1,000. And you'll have dinner with us. Then you and Ivan can go down to the coast and spend the night, and then you get ready to go. Well, goodness gracious, now I have the promise of $3,000. First I don't have any, and now I have $3,000. And then I realized that I had to leave with my daughter at least $1,000, because taking care of all these people was not inexpensive on special diets and so forth. So we loaded up the van and put in all the wheelchairs and all of the kids and the accordion, and took the station wagon, and we went to Portland with the kids. We took one suitcase apiece for them, because there was no room in her house for suitcases or for clothes, for that matter. And we delivered them up there. We came back home. I got as far as Salem, and I was wiped out. I've never been so tired in my life. I thought, I cannot go home. I just cannot. So I stopped, and Ivan said, but honey, you've got to get ready to go. I said, I know, I can't help it. I cannot drive. I'm done. All of this build-up, and then suddenly it was a letdown. And so we got a motel. We stayed overnight. I woke up in the morning at 6 o'clock, and I was just as fresh as could be, wide awake, and we drove home, prepared for the trip, got everything ready. We went down the next night to see the doc and his wife, picked up the check. I was on my way to Baba. Now, when I got over there, it was my first trip. In the meantime, he had made this ring, but this story is in all of Murphy's books, so I'm not going into that. But it was a sign that I was going. And when I got over there, the first day that we were there, he talked to Mataji, and he ignored me completely. But the smell of the vibhuti and the incense and everything told me this is India. And this is what's always been with me. There's no doubt. This is the wonderful, wonderful scent. And the next day he came out and he spoke to Mataji. And then he came over to me and he said, and how did you like your ring? And I said, it's beautiful, Baba. Thank you. He said, yes, yes. So all this time, he had planned all this play, and I had gone through this, but through it all, in the background, there was that faith. I don't know if I could call it pure faith, because I was always doubting that I was going, but I never stopped knowing that I was going to go. It's a funny thing. It was a funny situation, but that's how I went to India the first time. Yes. Pardon? Oh, it's another story, honey. It's in the book. It's in one of Howard Murphy's books, okay? So that's the name of that story, and I think my time is almost up. So in the next 7 minutes, if there's something that you would like to know, if not, I will sit down. Yes?
Are you still having the 4th of July retreats?
Oh, yes, yes. Yes, we've been having them every year. Swami told us to have the retreats, and so we've been doing it. And each year they're growing more and more. This year it looks like we'll have double what we had last year. But they're nowhere near as big as your retreat here, because we figure a big retreat for us was 110 people, and if it doubles, it's going to be a little bigger. But it's a wonderful area. It's Baba's, that I'll tell you. When we first went to India, the land that we bought, we couldn't find a house in Grants Pass, and we moved down there because of a child that we were adopting, and we had to get out of Multnomah County with the child because a stepfather was trying to kill it. And we were going down for a year. The judge said, go out of town for a year, get someplace to live, get this off of this man's mind, and then when you do, we'll finish the adoption, and so on. So we moved down to Grants Pass. Well, it so happened that he came to Grants Pass, and my cousin saw him downtown and knew that he was there, and he was determined to destroy that baby. He was just, it was like he was insane and he was going to destroy this child. And so we had to take the child back to Portland and get him, he was part Japanese, and so they put him into a Japanese home so that he wouldn't recognize him among the other children. Now, when we were doing all of these things and getting all of this put together to take him up there and to protect him, it was a protective type thing. Baba was so strong in the house, and we always thought that that baby would come back to us, and there was no doubt the judge, everybody was, that was the plan. But it so happened that he was so intense on finding the child that the judge said, we don't dare send him back with you. And so we decided, it was very heartbreaking because I was there when he was delivered and I brought the baby home. But we decided that for the baby's sake and for him to live, that he had to go to a different adoptive home. There was no doubt about it. Now, when we did that, when we brought him down and we got that house, we were always thinking that we would get another one because the house wasn't satisfactory. It was an old nursing home, and it was very expensive to redo it and fix it up. And all of our money went to foster kids, and so we didn't have much money to fix anything up. Anyway, when I got to India, Ivan was with me, and Ivan was sitting out on the grounds, and Baba walked out, and he came over to Don Heath, was there at that time, and he came over to Don, he talked to Don and somebody else, then he walked over to Ivan, and he hit him on the back real hard, just whack, whack, whack. I thought, my goodness, what did Ivan do? Baba's really pounding on him. And so later I said to Ivan, what did Baba say to you? And he said, he told me, do not sell your property. And so I said, were you thinking of selling it? And he said, yes, there's so much work to do there. It's just work all the time. And he was working at the time, and it was just too much work for him to keep up. But Baba said, do not sell your property. Then when we went in for an interview, Swami told us, I have brought you there. Why do you want to sell? What are you doing? It's very spiritual ground, and I have brought you there. That's holy ground, and you must not sell your property. And so then when we thought about it, we thought, well, why us? You know, why were we given that? There's other people that's lived there. Why didn't he keep them there? I wasn't really too happy with that house. That was the problem. But later on, he said, when he talked to me, he said, if it were not for the child, you would not have gone. Only but for the love of a child have you gone to the Holy Land that I have offered you. That's why we're there. Thank you.